to strengthen the enduring alliance between the United States and the Philippines. It's an enduring alliance that is rooted in long and deeply interwoven history, shared democratic values and interests, and strong people-to-people ties between our countries, as friends, as partners, as allies.
Presumptive President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. had a packed day at his Mandaluyong headquarters. In a courtesy call with U.S. Charge d'Affaires Heather Variava, climate change and the Mutual Defense Treaty with the U.S. were the topics.
Pinag-usapan namin the return or the re-signing or the extension of the VFA agreement and how it has to be redefined.
The country's transition to a new government will, of course, see the Philippines revisiting its foreign relations, the United States being one of its biggest allies. What will the U.S. and Philippine relations be like over the next 6 years? We discussed in this episode of The Chiefs. We will be joined by our guests and the other chiefs when we return. Welcome to The Chiefs. Ako po si Robbie Alampay and with us online, Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star and with us here in the studio, Ed Lingao of One News. Chiefs, good evening.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Anong balita, Ami?
Siyempre, yung mga bagong appointments, we have a DSWD Secretary from Mass Media ulit.
Erwin
And
Tulfo?
tourism from nakuha sa local government. And of course, yung Deputy BSP Governor, not Deputy, Assistant. Assistant Governor is now the new Budget Secretary.
Tapos DICT, may appointment na rin ng DICT. No?
And DICT,
Ivan Uy.
yes, Ivan Uy from another recruit from the Noynoy Aquino government. So,
Oh, so nabubuo na yung team ni incoming President Marcos.
We're still waiting for DND and DFA. DFA, interestingly...
Yes, DFA.
Interestingly...
Nababalita. Itong,
Oo nga
boss nun si Ami. Baka sumagot kay Ami yun. Now joining us. Para pag-usapan natin, baka naman alam niya kung sinong DFA Secretary.
Baka nabulungan na.
Now joining us, Philippine Ambassador to the United States and Philippine Star columnist, Ambassador Jose Manuel Babes Romualdez. Ambassador Babes, good evening. Welcome back to Chief, sir. Good morning over there.
Hi.
Good morning, Ambassador.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Well, actually, good evening to you, Robbie, and Ami, and Ed.
Yes, sir.
Very nice to see all of you.
Umpisahan na lang po natin. Baka may pa-headline kayo kay Ami pa sa Philippine Star. Ano bang balita nyo? Sino bang napupusuan na DFA Secretary?
Well, sa totoo lang, I had a meeting with the President-elect the other week, and he indicated to me that he wanted me to continue here in Washington, D.C. For the next, perhaps for the next year. So that's as far as we went. Now, who he will pick as the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, I think it's really still probably inside his head, and he would probably reveal it sometime soon.
Okay, but that's fair.
Not too long from now.
That's fair enough as far as the DFA Secretary is concerned. But about your conversation with the incoming president for you to continue in Washington, did you accept? Will you remain as a U.S. ambassador for the coming 1 or 2 years?
Well, frankly, when I spoke to him in March, I told him that I was really planning to come back to Manila after my term ends on June 30th. But he just said, let's talk about it. And so I left it at that. But I also told him that I was very much willing to do whatever it is that I can help him. As you know, I have a very soft spot for President-elect. He's 10 years younger than me, but we've known each other in terms of going around quite a lot in the past. And so I really would like to see him succeed. And this is, for me, really overwhelming to see him become the next president of the Philippines.
Yes, sir. The time frame that you mentioned, 1 to 2 years in Washington, was that your timetable, or was that from the president himself, the incoming president himself, who brought up that timetable of 1 to 2 years?
Well, he just told me that he would like to for me to continue what I've been doing in Washington, D.C. And he said that he's seen or heard on how the good work that we've been, not only myself, of course, but the staff in the embassy and all our consulates from Guam to New York. So with that, I think he meant for me to stay a little longer beyond my term that ends on June 30th. So I assumed that he would like me to stay here perhaps for a year, or maybe a little longer than that. I'm willing to do whatever it is for me to be able to be of service to the Philippines and to the new president.
Why would you want to end your term by June? You originally said you wanted to end your term by June 30. Why? Why do you want to come home?
No, actually, June 30 we're all political appointees, so we're automatically recalled on June 30th. Of course, we can be extended by the current Secretary of Foreign Affairs, subject to the approval of the next administration. So, since Secretary Locsin has already extended me, it is just for the next administration to just confirm my staying in Washington, D.C.
So did the President-elect have any specific instructions to you? Since you are staying on, and he has said that he will also be pursuing an independent foreign policy, and besides, he wants to take a second look. Well, he wants to review the Visiting Forces Agreement. Did he have any specific instructions to you? Now that I think you are assured already of being reappointed, and I think you are assured of confirmation by the CA. You breezed through the confirmation process the last time?
Well, I think first of all, I mean, there's already been a precedent in extension. So in my case, since I'm already here in Washington, D.C., I will not need to go through all of that.
Okay.
Also check with the State Department. There really will not be any need for me to send an agreement. Now, so an extension is basically, they just continue with it. It's just a confirmation of the next administration. Our conversation, actually, I gave the president-elect an overview of our U.S.-Philippine relations as it stands right now. And I think from there, he just told me that it seems that everything seems to be in order and he would like to see this continue for now. And on the question of the VFA, it's not really a review, but it was very clear that the VFA, every year, there is sort of like a review on the visiting forces agreement. And it's mostly to either improve or to see how we can find other areas where the training, most especially for our soldiers, can be improved. And also the equipment that is being used, that it will be interoperable and that we'll be able to get some of those equipment. This happens every year. This has been going on since 1999, since we've had this VFA.
Yes, sir. But sir, the president, in the soundbite that we played earlier, the incoming president used the word define, or redefine, redefining the VFA. We're not exactly sure what he meant by that. We're wondering if it was made clear to you what he had in mind.
Parang nawala yata yung signal ni...
May delay siya. Ambassador, can you hear us?
We'll try to get him back. I think we're trying to reconnect with the ambassador.
But I do recall that that soundbite that we played in the intro, where the incoming president used the word redefine the relations in the VFA.
Oh, kasi yan talaga. Ito, I think. Ambassador, are you back with us?
Okay.
Can you hear us?
Can you hear, sir?
Ambassador?
Okay. Nakamute po yata kayo.
Nakamute.
Okay, I'm here. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, just to repeat my question a while ago, I'm not sure if you caught it.
Sorry for that.
In the introduction that we had a while ago, we played a soundbite from the incoming president where he talked about the possibility of redefining the relations in the VFA. Was it made clear to you, or were there any indications to you as to what the incoming president wants to redefine in the relationship?
Well, redefinition of the VFA is basically to continue the VFA, but at the same time redefine it in what areas we can improve the visiting forces agreement. Of course, if the abrogation which took place during the time of President, or now during President Duterte's term, we abrogated or we suspended the visiting forces agreement. So all the plans for having the training exercises were completely suspended until it was reinstated, I think, last November of last year. So that is probably what by redefinition would be, to just simply see where we can improve or do something about the VFA in terms of our joint exercises and also in relation to the Mutual Defense Treaty.
What about coming the other way? How does Washington officially see relations with the Philippines under a Marcos government?
Well, one of the first things that was actually asked of me was because, the information they had, of course, with the president-elect was mostly when he was just a governor and a senator. So they asked my opinion on what, in my view, was his views on the relationship with the United States. And I simply said that the president-elect has always looked at the United States as a friend and ally. And so I don't think there will be any change in any attitude towards the United States. Although in my short conversation with him shortly before the elections, he actually said that he wants to pursue the independent foreign policy that was started by President Duterte.
Can you nuance that? What does independent? I was asking that earlier. What does independence mean in the context of the incoming administration?
Well, the independence is mostly defined by simply saying that we will not. It's not a zero-sum game. We're not going to go just purely on one side and just forget about the other side. Specifically, of course, the competition that's going on now between the United States and China, especially in the Indo-Pacific area. We definitely would like to have very good relations with our neighbor China, at the same time continuing our relationship with the United States. Very clearly, our defense treaty and our visiting forces agreement is in place. That has been there for several decades now, and we intend to continue that as far as the president-elect is concerned. He is more concerned really more on the economic ties that we would like to have. We would like to have stronger economic cooperation between these two countries. These are two major economic powers that we will be able to pursue that kind of foreign policy where we can get more on the economic cooperation more than anything else. We definitely look at the Mutual Defense Treaty as merely just a tool, so to speak, in being able to defend our territorial rights in the future if need be, which hopefully will never have to be on a confrontation that no one wants would like to happen.
So, sir, I do remember in late 2016, President Duterte announced that he was placing the Philippines under the sphere of influence of China and Russia. That was sometime in late 2016. Of course, he has dialed back a bit since then. But I'm wondering if we are looking along the same lines as that, or no, that is off the table.
Well, I don't think that we really went either way. The sphere of influence is basically having, I would say, our ties with both China and the and Russia are different from the ties that we have with the United States. The reason for that is obviously we have this defense treaty, we have the VFA, and we have very strong people-to-people ties with the United States. With these two countries, Russia most especially, I think mostly it is more on redefining our diplomatic relations, which is probably what happened during the President Duterte's time, especially when he went to Russia. He wanted to see more possibilities of getting arms, for instance, from Russia, perhaps also having more economic trade. With China, it is a different story altogether, too. We wanted, again, it was more on the economy, but President Duterte saw an opportunity to be able to sort of like have a stronger tie with China so that we could resolve the issues, especially surrounding the West Philippine Sea, in a more, probably in a bilateral cooperation type of arrangement. But I think time has run out. We still have that issue still looming around us in the West Philippine Sea.
Sir, the U.S. President Joe Biden said he will cooperate. He looks forward to working with the new government, with the incoming President Marcos. But he also said that, among other things, he looks forward to collaborating closely on human rights. Now, it's no secret media has underscored that particular passage on human rights. Is there any awkwardness, or is there anything that particular phrase you think alludes to between when it comes to Washington and the incoming president, particularly with with White House officials acknowledging historical considerations that could, in fact, cause some, quote, challenges in the communication?
Well, I think human rights violations has been an issue or something that we've had for many, many years, not only during the time of Marcos Sr. or even before that, but it continued on even up to today. Human rights can also be on both ways. I mean, I think we've said in the past that human rights violations were also committed against our soldiers by the insurgents. So these are things that I think that it's been around, and definitely we do not condone human rights. I don't think the administration of President Marcos Jr. is going to condone any such activity. And we will continue to cooperate with human rights groups to be able to improve our situation as far as human rights is concerned. I know that it will be an issue that it is an issue that's continuing, and it is something that we will have to continue to address as we move forward.
Yes, and there are these, as you said, these other cases that extend beyond the previous Marcos administration, all administrations for that matter. But for the incoming president in particular, for Ferdinand Marcos Jr., it is of a particular nature because in some cases, on certain levels, it is he personally that is involved. He has a standing contempt order, for example, in U.S. courts related to cases addressing his father's own crimes. I mean, does that create any, as we said, any awkwardness or any protocols that need to be ironed out?
Well, those cases have been around since 1986, and from what I am told, of course, I'm not privy to exactly what the current situation is as far as that's concerned, but the Marcos lawyers in the United States have been handling that case for all these years now, and the contestation or what is being contested there is the fact that the award that was given is something that they are still. I wouldn't want to use the word negotiating, but it's still being considered as why the case is continuing now. Now, I quite honestly, I do not know really how that will be during when he becomes president, and if there is going to be awkwardness. Just to give you an example, Prime Minister Modi of India had a particular case here in the United States, but that didn't hinder his, first of all, coming to the United States, and he had a meeting with President Biden. And I think that is because of the fact that any head of state has immunity from any kind of what they call a waiver that's invoked on some of these cases that might still be pending. So, but that is only what I have seen in the case of Prime Minister Modi. So, I am quite certain that will be the case with President-elect Marcos.
Well, speaking of going to the United States, would you be aware if the President-elect would be willing to go to the U.S. for a meeting with President Biden? I'm sure you are starting to see if this is possible because you will be the one laying the groundwork for it. President Duterte never went to the United States.
Well, I think that President Duterte really made it clear that he had no interest in going to the United States. As a matter of fact, in my last meeting with him, when President Biden was inviting him, it was a personal letter written by President Biden to come to the United States for the ASEAN summit. President Duterte said that he would just send Secretary Locsin, of which Secretary Locsin and I were the only ones who were not heads of state in the summit and, in fact, in the White House dinner, which was, of course, an opportunity for me and Secretary Locsin to be able to interact with the other heads of state and with President Biden himself. It was a very, very, well, I would say a very nice way to end my stint here in Washington, D.C., but I guess it's being prolonged now. Now, in the question of whether President-elect Marcos will be coming here when he becomes president, I'm sure that an invitation would probably be extended to him. But I have, on many occasions, have always believed that any Philippine president should first and foremost go to the United Nations. And I'm sure that President-elect Marcos will go there. If he is invited to go to the White House or to the Washington, D.C., I'm sure he'll be very willing to do so. But that is something that is up to the United States, if they invite him or not. There have been already many other heads of state that have indicated that they're inviting him, the Singapore president, and I understand also if I'm not mistaken, the South Korean president, and many other heads of state that are extending an invitation to the president-elect. They would like to definitely have an in-person meeting with him.
Have there been any last-minute instructions to you from President Duterte regarding our bilateral relations with Washington?
Well, I think the last word I got from him was very simply that he said that I have gone a long way with our relationship with the United States. As you know, he was telling me when I met him that he was very pleased with the outcome of all the times that we had issues with the United States, and that it has come to this particular situation. And it can be summed up in what he has always wanted for the United States to look at us, and that is when Secretary Austin said that we should never take our eye for granted. So that alone is what is important for President Duterte, that we have mutual trust and mutual respect for each other's sovereignty.
Mm-hmm. Sir, if the U.S. government does extend an invitation to incoming President Marcos to visit the U.S., whether a state visit or whether for something with the UN, what is the process there? Is it an automatic sovereign immunity, or do we have to ask the State Department to petition the Honolulu court to grant some sort of immunity? So that he can, because it was the Honolulu court that brought down the 320 million contempt charge against Bongbong Marcos. So, and I suppose we do also have to respect their separation of powers.
Well, maybe we can just set as an example. I think in the case of Senator Gringo Honasan, former Senator Gringo Honasan, as you know, that he has even a more serious case that he was tagged as a terrorist, especially during the coup of 1989. There was a waiver that was granted to the former senator, if I remember correctly, and he was able to travel to the United States. So they call that a waiver coming from the State Department that will allow him to travel to the United States without having to face any of this, whatever charges that they've been, which is a far more serious case if you if you really look at it. So I assume that this will probably be the same case if ever President-elect or the incoming president decides to go to the United States, and most especially if he's invited by the White House.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some months ago, I remember President Duterte saying he hasn't been to the United States in a long time, and I don't know if we read him right, but he seems interested in visiting. So would former President Rodrigo Duterte, enjoying retirement, would you know if he would want to visit the U.S. as on vacation?
Oh, maybe Disney World or...
Well, I can't tell. We've always tried to convince him to come to the United States, especially while I was the ambassador. It would be a great honor to have my president come. But he has never really had any. I don't think the inclination or even the excitement of going to the United States for President Duterte has ever been there. He would say that, I haven't been there in a long time. Maybe I'd like to visit my old friends there. He'd be joking around. But in this particular summit, it was very important that we really talked to him seriously and said that this will be a great moment for him to come. And I think that it would be great for the country. In the end, he decided that he'd rather just stay in Manila. And in fairness to him, he really meant what he said. He wanted to stay because of the elections, and he wanted to make sure that it would be the cleanest and the most honest elections ever the Philippines has ever had. And I think the results is very clear. I think we've had almost zero incidents of any situation where we can question the outcome of the elections. And that is to the credit of President Duterte.
Okay. The United States has also said that they hope to help the Philippines uphold its maritime rights, and for that matter, the rights of other nations to navigation in this part of the world. Is there any indication on the side either of the incoming president or the side of Washington on what they hope to see when it comes in particular to the arbitral ruling on the West Philippine Sea?
Well, President-elect Marcos has said in a recent interview that he will not. He wants the Hague ruling to be accepted by all parties concerned, and he will not allow anyone, not even a square millimeter, to use his words, should be trampled upon. And so I think with that, it's very clear to him that the Hague ruling is something that he looks at as a document that we will use to argue our case with all those parties that are claiming in the area, especially China. Now, how we will do that is, of course, dependent on how we will, again, look at our relationship with the United States that has already told us, not only during the time that they will cover our back, but including this administration of President Biden, that they will be right behind us in whatever happens as far as the West Philippine Sea is concerned.
Yeah, maybe how exactly we're going to do that, as you said, is still a question. But at this point, if we're hearing you right, is it fair to then say that the incoming administration is on a stance to invoke it and to use that arbitral ruling? In other words, to upend the policy of the Duterte administration when it comes to the arbitral ruling?
Well, during the time of when President Duterte was very much concerned about that, he has said, in fairness to him, that he looks at the arbitral ruling as a basis for us and the claims that we have. No, in fact, I am told by Secretary Locsin that he took it up directly with President Xi, while President Xi just sort of like brushed it aside. But he did tell him straight, and that he expects China to respect the arbitral ruling. Now, in the coming administration of President-elect Marcos, I'm not sure where it will be, of course. It's still something that will have to be discussed with his new cabinet, and how we will move on the issues revolving around the West Philippine Sea. We'll just have to wait for that on how we will approach this issue as the new administration comes in.
But Ambassador, would it be safe to say we can expect a stronger defense alliance with the U.S. under the new Marcos presidency? Because you've mentioned it already, that let's describe it as competition between China and the U.S. continues to intensify. Maritime trade, and of course we will maybe at some point we will need to lean more on one country. Would you say that we will have a stronger military or defense alliance, security alliance with the U.S. under a Marcos presidency?
We already have that. I think that the United States, especially after we resumed our VFA, has made it very clear that we will continue to cooperate in maritime security. That's one of the strategies that has been put together. And last November, we had a bilateral strategic dialogue, which happens every year, and we have a vision statement over the next 10 years on how we will continue our relationship as far as our defense treaty is concerned. And it's very clear there that the United States will be very much involved in giving us more modern equipment that will. And by the way, we've received the largest number of the largest amount over the past 5 years during the time of President Duterte in terms of military aid and military sales, and that the whole thing is probably worth about $650 million, which gives you an indication of how serious the United States sees our relationship at this time, especially, as you said, with the competition with China.
And finally, Mr. Ambassador, with respect to trade and economic cooperation, the world is trying to reopen. Every economy is trying to rev up all over again. What are the low-hanging opportunities that you see that the next administration can seize?
Well, as you know, the United States is now encouraging American companies to start diversifying from China. This is, again, it is in relation to the strong competition of trade between the United States and China. And so a lot of American companies have started to look at the ASEAN region. We're competing, of course, with the other countries in the ASEAN. I've always told our ASEAN friends here in Washington, D.C., it's really a competition that we are gladiators by day and collaborators by night. So we work together as the ASEAN community, but at the same time, we're competing for all these investments that are going our way. Vietnam, of course, is very aggressive, and because they have sort of like an authoritarian rule where if whatever a company needs, they can give it without any question. In our case, in fairness again to the administration of President Duterte and especially with Secretary Dominguez, we've opened up our economy much better. It's a little more attractive. We hope that those reforms will become even more aggressive because of the global competition for not only for American business, but for more investments coming from many parts of the world. And the Philippines is poised to get more of that because of our location. Just to give you an example, even during the pandemic, we've had two major investments that came our way. One was the KSA Communications, which have spent billions in putting up thousands of towers, communication towers. And then, of course, we all know about the Hanjin project that was taken over by Cerberus, which is a big financial company based out of New York that is now will be operating the Hanjin foreclosed, which saved many of our banks a lot of money. And hopefully it will bring in a lot of investments, more jobs. But that is just an example of many of the things that will be coming our way. Because Clark also is a big hub now for FedEx. So there are many distribution companies, like a shoe company that has already indicated that they'd like to put up their distribution point for the ASEAN region in Clark because of FedEx. So this will be what the future will be like in terms of getting more investments coming from the West, especially the United States.
Okay. Ambassador Romualdez, sir, maraming salamat po sa inyo.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you very much to see all of you. Thank you, Ami.
Philippine Ambassador to the United States, Jose Manuel Babes Romualdez. Please stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back.
Welcome back to Chiefs here on One News. And now joining us is Stephanie Gonzalez, the Managing Director of Philux, a furniture producer and retailer. Magandang gabi. Good evening, Ms. Gonzalez, and welcome to the Chiefs.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ami. Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight.
Well, thank you for joining us. We of course are doing this because we also want to support our local craftsmen. But tell us first about Philux. We understand that you started off with 2 carpenters, and now I think you have 200 people working under you. Tell us the story about behind this company.
Correct. Philux is a family business. It was established in 1980, so we're over 40 years old. And as a young girl, I witnessed both my mom and dad's entrepreneurial spirit as they tackled export in the 80s, exporting handicrafts, and then in the 90s, later on, shifted to local manufacturing and retail. And Philux actually stands for Philippine luxury. So at the heart of our business is really our desire to champion conscious Filipino craft through our furniture design.
Over those decades that you've mentioned, over the decades that Philux has been growing, it's no secret that the Philippine furniture industry its own has gone through its ups and downs, very good highs, very bad lows as well. How do you navigate that? And all in all, what are the challenges for the Philippine furniture industry?
Well, we're very lucky that after 40 years, we have been able to create a very strong brand. And our brand is really rooted in furniture that is proudly Filipino made. So everything from design to concept, manufacturing, delivery, and after service is proudly Filipino, and that's consistently part of our branding message. And because of our shift towards local furniture and local retail specifically in the 1990s, we've really been able to establish this brand further in the local market. And so now we have over 7 showrooms across Metro Manila.
How has competition from China affected you? Because I've talked to some other furniture makers, and they said, the Chinese would come in, they would just copy the designs, and then they would produce at half the cost, and it just ruined the industry. How did it affect your business?
I believe that imitation is the best form of flattery. So it's not without its challenges, certainly, but it really keeps us on our toes. It's very important for our research and development team to just keep on working at this continuous development. And I think that healthy competition is good for everyone in the local industry.
There's also emphasis now on sustainable everything, sustainable furniture, of course. Where do you source your materials, and how do you pursue this policy of sustainable furniture?
No, absolutely. Sustainability really has always been a core value at Philux, and we're constantly studying ways on how we can reduce our environmental impact, whether it's through conscious engineering or, as you said, sourcing of more ethical raw materials or upcycling. So one of the things we do, simply solid wood is our main raw material, and we make sure that we source from FSC forests or sustainably managed forests. So small things like this can really help our sustainable journey moving forward. It's certainly not a linear process. It has a lot of challenges, but it's something we're fiercely passionate about.
So you import some of your materials?
Absolutely. We import the wood that we feel can be properly certified from global entities that really just focus on that.
Mm-hmm. So how is that supply chain doing now? Everything has been... I like that laugh.
I'm laughing because I complain to my husband, who's in the port industry all the time. But it has been a challenge, and so we really have to forecast in advance a lot of our orders, and we just have, as I said earlier, just be on our toes and always, rely on local alternatives if need be. But we try to source locally as much as possible, but just for the sustainable aspect of the business, we have to source our wood from these FSC forests.
But let me try to reframe Ami's earlier question about competing with China. Kasi I can imagine a lot of Filipinos now going online. Even to buy furniture. I mean, Lazada's there, Shopee's there. I'm wondering lang, what lessons could you pass on to fellow Filipino craftsmen, fellow Filipino businesses that are right now competing head to head with foreign imports that can sometimes be a lot cheaper because they're differently made.
Well, I think one thing we have is this very special artisanal skill, and that's something that we need to emphasize. And it's not necessarily all about cost, but focusing on that human capital behind the product and the people and the story behind the products and the designs that we're trying to create. So I think just being dynamic, continuously innovating, and relying and kind of leaning on the skilled artisans that we have here is very important.
Let me say, my wife and I come home every night proudly and happily to a Philux bed. I just looked it up.
That makes me very happy.
A Stockholm, if I'm getting that right. As a Stockholm model. And we're very happy, but I just want to frame it this way. And this has nothing to say about whether or not I think it's a great value. It's of great value. But you mentioned artisanal, and every time people hear the word artisanal, they also they attribute it to being expensive. Is that a niche that we have to settle for, or does that not necessarily follow? Can we actually play in this furniture industry, in this game, and compete at all levels, at all segments of the market?
I certainly think so. I think it has a lot to do with how you set up your production. Our setup is really more of a workshop style where we still have these traditional woodworking Italian machines from the 1970s paired with very labor-intensive skills. And so we are not necessarily set up to compete with the high-volume China competitors that are coming in. However, I mean, I'm pretty sure that with certain investment and with more modern technologies, a lot of Filipino companies and local manufacturers can really improve and be competitive in pricing, but still maintain the quality that we're known for.
Okay. That said, what do we need from government?
We need a lot of support from them.
Which are your biggest markets?
Our biggest market currently is the Philippine market. We have a few export clients, and because of our 40 years in the industry, we have a lot of Filipinos abroad who know our products, who keep asking us to open abroad, and that's something we can explore in the future.
What was the impact of the pandemic on the business?
Well, like all retail, we were affected, and there was a period of uncertainty, especially during the 3 months of lockdown when both our manufacturing and our retail was shut down. But we took that opportunity to really, work internally on how to be leaner, on how to come back stronger. We developed our digital platform, and we really focused on creating a lot more digital content that could be easily shared through social media. We redeveloped our website. We made it more user-friendly. Our e-commerce is now really handled internally. And so I think all of these steps has allowed us to come back a little bit stronger and more confidently now that we're post-pandemic or in the post-pandemic phase.
Okay, Ms. Gonzalez, maraming salamat. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you and good luck.
Ms. Stephanie Gonzalez is Managing Director of Philux. And once again, thank you very much for joining us. catch her episode on Infinite Legacies by Smart Infinity on June 5, this Sunday at 5:30 p.m. here on One News. And that will be all for this edition of The Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Before we go, a reminder to our viewers, mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Ami Paminton of the Philippine Star.
I'm Ed Lingao, and we are One News.